All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, thanks for coming. I know if you're here, you either couldn't make it into Scott Hanselman's session or you chose this one over it. So thank you for being here. I know that's a popular session, and I hope this one will be worth your while as well. My name's Aaron Bjork, and I'm going to be your host. And our topic today is getting started with Visual Studio Online. So this is very much going to be a demo-heavy session. I'm going to walk you through what Visual Studio Online is, show you how to use it, and really encourage you to sign up for an account today and try it out for yourself. So before I do that, is just a quick raise of hands. How many people are using Visual Studio Online today? Okay, great. It sounds like there's a fair amount of interest. I'll say that I'm going to be up at the booth this evening, and I'll be here the whole week. If you have any kind of questions, there's a bunch of folks from our team. We'd love to get them answered for you as well, so don't hesitate to come find us. And I'll give you my email, my Twitter account's there. Feel free to reach out to me as well with questions. So let me give you a quick sort of agenda. I'm going to give us, I really want to tell you a little bit about what Visual Studio Online is and explain it to you. I want to give you a little bit of a glimpse into our Visual Studio Online journey. And what I mean by that is really, I'm a part of the team that's put this together, and I've been a part of the developer division at Microsoft for a number of years. And I want to tell you a little bit about how we've transformed our culture and really the way we write code to bring this service alive. So I'll share a little bit of that, and then it's pretty much pure demo after that. I'll try to leave some time for questions at the end. If you have an absolutely important question that you just can't hold, try to raise your hand during, and if I can see you amidst the lights, we'll get you over to a mic, and I'll try to take it as we go. Okay, before we do that, let me introduce myself to you so you know who's standing up here on stage talking to you. There's three things I like to share with people about myself. First of all, I'm a Seattle native, so I'm one of the few guys at Microsoft that was sort of born and raised in the Seattle area. I've lived there all my life. Married with 3 kids. So who has more than 3 kids? Okay, these are the people you need to take out for a drink later, because they're doing the real work in this world. 2 other interesting things about myself is I love to play golf. My goal is to be a single-digit handicap. I've gotten it down to 11, but I think I'm going to have to spend a lot more time playing to get there. But any golfers in the crowd? So look, raise your hands high, because this is one of my biggest regrets, is that in almost 20 years of doing this, I've never played golf for a work event. I've just never done it. And nobody in the software industry plays golf. We play golf on the Xbox, but nobody plays golf, real golf. So if you want to invite me to your next tournament, I'd love to play and help out. And then the other thing is that about a little more than a year ago, my family decided we wanted to become rural. We wanted to try this out. So we moved, we bought a place a little ways out of town. We now live on 15 acres. And we've got some animals. I've got 2 horses. We've got 4 goats. I actually own a tractor. And I'm kind of learning what it means to be a sort of hobby farmer on the side. So that's kind of my fun. Anybody else in the audience own a tractor? Sometimes, there's a couple hands, so that's cool. It's great. On the Xbox, that's right. Exactly. Other things about me, I'm an Agile guy, so I usually, at a lot of these conferences, I'm talking about our Agile tools, Agile project management. I love seeing teams build software better, and I love software process. So if you have questions or thoughts about Agile, come talk to me about them. And then I was a business major in college. I went to the University of Washington. So let's go around the room now, and we'll each share a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so that's me. I like to share that so you know who's talking to you. Okay, so what is Visual Studio Online? A lot of people come to this talk because they just want to know what this thing is. And there's a lot of different ways to describe it. But what I like to say is that Visual Studio Online is essentially a set of complementary cloud-based services to help you write code better. And that's the way I like to think about it. We offer Agile project management tools in the cloud, which I'll demo for you. We offer code browsing, code editing, code diffing, repositories, places to check in your code. We offer both Git repos and Team Foundation version control repositories. We offer build services. You can run tests on Visual Studio Online. You can manage your test cases up there. You can even deploy your app from VSO. And now we have a new feature called Application Insights, which allows you to get telemetry on your app and better understand how your app's performing, both from a traffic perspective and from a performance perspective. And that's really what Visual Studio Online is all about. Again, it's a set of cloud-based services to help you write better code. And it's built for teams. I want to stress that. We think that well, I want you to keep your personal projects there, and I keep all my personal projects there. It's really built for software teams, and it's a fantastic service. So I'm going to show you how to get started with it, show you how to sign up, and hopefully you can take advantage of that. So a little bit about the service itself. These are just things I like to call out. The first thing is that when you sign up, you always get 5 free basic users. So what I mean by that is I can sign up for an account and use Visual Studio Online for free, no cost at all. I can check in code, I can run builds, I can do all this, no cost. You can also invite 4 of your friends to participate with you as well, and again, no cost. Now, we do have some features that are what we call paid features, and you have to pay a little bit and sign up for a subscription for those, but you're always going to have this ability to have projects that you can share with other people and collaborate with your team on for 5 or less. So that's something that's really, really important. It's also important to note that it's unlimited for private team projects. So you can go up and get your account, and we're not going to stop you. We're not going to say, you only get 3 projects, and that's it. It's really unlimited. So go use it for everything that you're doing. And if you're an MSDN subscriber, you can use Visual Studio Online at no additional cost. So it's there for you. Just go sign up and get started. OK, so that's a little bit about what Visual Studio Online is. Let me now share with you a little bit about our journey towards building Visual Studio Online. And I like to start this portion by using this kind of map because, one, it's nice to see that our logo is a little bit cooler than it used to be. And the other is to highlight that we used to release Visual Studio every couple of years, meaning we used to write, it used to take 2 to 3 years to produce a release of Visual Studio. As we fast forward, and as I talk to you about Visual Studio Online, you'll see that we're now releasing bits to the service, running on Azure every 3 weeks. So we've taken that release time from somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 years down to a 3-week cycle. And that's been a massive change for our organization. Now, if I lay out the timeline for Visual Studio Online, it really started 2.5 years ago is when we had our first what we call limited preview. And it was actually at the Build conference, I believe it was in LA. And that's where we opened up the service to the public. And you had to have an invite code, and you had to use that to get signed up and actually get registered with the service. At the time, we called it Team Foundation Service. So if you're familiar with Team Foundation Server, which is our on-premises product for, again, code management, agile planning, builds, and things like that, we basically took that product and started there. That was the beginning of Visual Studio Online. We then did a public preview about 9 months later where we opened it up to everybody. We released it officially later that year in October of 2012. And this last year, with the launch of Visual Studio 2013, it was rebranded and renamed to Visual Studio Online. And we saw a bunch of additional services come into play. Things like Application Insights, things like Visual Studio Monaco, which is code editing in the cloud, and things like that. And obviously, we're here today. Now, again, I like to highlight this for folks, is that as we've transformed the way we run our business, we've really made a lot of changes. And one of the biggest changes is that we ship code now every 3 weeks. And I'll show you some evidence of this a little bit in a few minutes here in our demo. But I really like to highlight this for people because it's, if you went back to Redmond and you were on campus and I took you into our building, Building 18, where we do most of our work, you'd see that we most closely resemble Scrum teams at the sort of base level. So our teams are anywhere from, I would say, 10 to probably 12 people on a team. Each team is made up of 3 different roles, primarily devs, QA, and then a program manager. Program manager would be sort of analogous to a product owner in Scrum terms. And the ratio of people on that team would look somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 5 to 6 devs, 3 to 4 QA people, and then 1 program manager. And again, we operate on a 3-week sprint cadence, and then a week after our sprints, we deploy those bits to our cloud. And the clouds, when I say the cloud, I mean Visual Studio Online, which is the service running on Azure. And then we wrap those up and bundle them up quarterly for on-premises customers into updates. So today we announced Visual Studio 2013 Update 2, which is a roll-up of a bunch of those features that maybe had been on the cloud or been on the service a few months earlier. And that's the way we're running our business now. We never stop sprinting. A lot of people ask me that. When do you take breaks from it? When do you stop? We don't. We're in the week 1 of Sprint 64 right now, and we just imagine this continuing on forever. So we've got a lot more numbers to burn in our sprint cadence there. So that's a little bit about our journey over the past couple years bringing the service to life. By the way, when I'm at the booth, it's a fun topic of mine. So if you have sort of stories to share about your own journey, your own Agile transformation, I'd love to chat with you about that. So let me tell you what we're going to do for our demo and give you a little outline. We're going to show what it takes to sign up for a VSO account. I know a lot of people already have accounts, so we'll get through that part quickly. And then we're going to create our own little Kanban board here of tasks. And we're going to build a quick backlog. We're going to create a website on Azure. We're going to deploy to it using continuous integration and continuous deployment. We're then going to set up some load testing for that particular application, and we're going to use application insights to monitor our telemetry. So really what I'm going to try to do is in the next 45 minutes give you sort of a broad picture of everything that you can do inside Visual Studio Online. And over the course of the next couple days, and I've got a slide here at the end, I'll point you to a ton of different sessions where we're going to go really deep on a lot of these things. So for instance, if you're really interested in application insights and the telemetry aspects, right after this session is another hour-long sessions by a few colleagues of mine, and they're going to go deep on that stuff. If you're really interested in continuous deployment to Azure, we've got a session tomorrow on that where we're going to go deep. So think of this as sort of the breadth session, if you will. I'm going to touch on everything and hopefully get you excited about it, and then you can attend other sessions to get a lot more detail. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our demo here. I'm going to switch machines, and everybody can see that okay. All right, so starting out, if you haven't signed up yet for an account, I just want to point you to this URL. You can go to www.visualstudio.com and just click Get Started for free. And I want you to go up and do that when, you can even do it right now if you want. But when you create an account, you essentially get a URL associated with your account. You get sort of a vanity domain name. And you can come up here and pick the domain name of your choice. So I could say Build Demo 2014. I actually don't know if that's available. But you could go up and create your own account. My personal account, you'll see up here in the URL, is named aaronbjork.visualstudio.com. So a lot of people just like to go sign up to make sure they can grab their own first and last name and make sure you get that and at least reserve it. So I'd encourage you to do that. Go sign up for an account. And again, everything that I show you here will be able to hopefully translate and you'll be able to do yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over off of the visualstudio.com site, and I'm going to go to my account, which I've already created. And I'm going to start by creating a new team project. So the first thing I'm going to do here is start off with my new team project, and we'll name this Build Demo. I'm going to put my initials in front of it and see if that's unique, because we're eventually going to deploy this to Azure as a website as well. One of the things you'll notice here is I get a choice of different process templates I can use. A process template is really something in TFS that just kind of defines what your work items look like. I'm going to pick our Agile process template, and I get 2 choices for version control. Again, Team Foundation version control or Git. I'm going to do Team Foundation version control because I think most other demos this week are going to show off Git functionality, so I'll show you a little bit of this as well. Now, this is just going to take probably 10 seconds or so to go ahead and create. I'm going to go ahead and close that, and while I'm waiting for it to come back, I'm going to open up a different project of mine. This is a project called Top Gun, and this is it shows how nerdy I am, but this is like a golf website that I write for a bunch of buddies and I that run a golf tournament every year, and we keep all sorts of stats and whatnot up on it. So again, I keep all of that on VSO, and this is sort of what my project homepage looks like. And you can see that I can track my sprint progress, and I've got a backlog of work items here. I've got different team members. Some of these team members you might recognize, but none of them actually contribute code to my project because I really keep them in here for demo purposes. But we're going to build something that really looks like this in the next couple of minutes. So let's go back here and browse, and our new team project should have been created. There it is, AB Build Demo. And we're going to go ahead and navigate to it. And you'll notice I get a similar sort of page here, but we're just sort of void of data. We don't have a lot here. So the first thing I'm going to do is build a backlog for us. And I'm going to jump into the backlog hub here. And this is really a fit-for-purpose tool for managing your requirements for your projects within Visual Studio Online. So our first task that we had here was we wanted to create a team project and get signed up for a VSO. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. This backlog tool allows us to reorder all of our work items. It allows us to sort of estimate our progress and how far we're going to get. And we can manage all this through a Kanban board as well. Now, one of the things you'll notice, this is taking a little while. This is where I'm going to be very transparent. This is actually a bug that we're working on. Your very first work item that you add into a team project takes anywhere from 8 to 12 seconds to add in. And it's sort of embarrassing when you're doing demos, but I just want to let you know and let you know that we have plans on fixing that. Second and third work items are faster. So, performance is something that we care about, but I just wanted to show you that. It's not always going to be that slow. Now, I showed you how quickly it is to add things in here. And again, I could reorder these things, adjust the priority of them just by dragging and dropping. That's nice. But one of the things that I find that many people don't know about, but I like to demo for people, is our Excel integration. So I'm going to actually go over it into Excel, and I'm going to build a new workbook here. And I'm going to show you how Visual Studio Online can talk directly to your Office tools as well. So I'm going to go over to the Team Hub here, and I'm going to click New List. And what we're going to do here is essentially connect to our project online. So you'll notice my URL here, aaronbjork.visualstudio.com. I'm going to choose AB Build Demo, and I'm going to go ahead and connect directly to that project. Now, the next thing that it's going to ask me for is a query. And I need to go back here, and let's create a query out of this backlog real quick. So I'm just going to say AB Build Demo Team Stories. We just created that particular query. And let me do this because I should have done that before. When I say New List and in My Queries, there you see that I've got my query. So essentially what I'm doing now is I'm binding this work item query on Visual Studio Online into Excel. And what I can do once it's bound is I can make updates. So I could say second and third are fasters, which isn't too super interesting. I can publish those changes. If you notice quickly down here, it said it did a bunch of stuff. And then when I refresh here, you'll see that it's updated those work items for me. So we're making changes there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take some things I had sitting in Excel before, and I'm just going to go ahead and add in the backlog of what we want to do today. Again, we want to build a backlog. We want to get a new website set up on Azure. We want to demo CI and CD, load test, and app insights. So we're going to make all these user stories. I'll assign some story point values just for kicks. And one of the kind of nice features here is we have the ability to tag things. So I could say this was a sample. I'll show you how tags work as well. Okay, so I'm going to publish that. Again, watch here. It goes quick. It's published back and refresh. And now we've got our nice backlog built right in Visual Studio Online. So again, I can do it through the tool here, or I can use Excel. Again, a lot of people love Excel because you get a lot of those bulk edit features. I just find a lot of people love doing that in Excel for some reason. So try it out yourself. Some other cool things I can do here is I can turn on our forecast feature. So if you're using sprints, you could say that maybe we get 5 units of effort done every sprint. Well, actually, 5 is not very realistic. Let's choose 15. And what we do is we sort of draw some lines across your backlog to give you a forecast. If you can complete 15 units of effort over each sprint, we can start to understand how your backlog is going to look. And then you'll notice that as I drag and drop and reprioritize things, that forecast changes as well. Not very interesting on a backlog of 6 things, but if you're doing a backlog of many, it can be very, very helpful. So let's get this in the proper order. Put that one down at the bottom because it's not super interesting. And now let's flip over to our Kanban board view of the backlog. So again, this is the exact same data. We're just now pivoting and viewing it as a board instead of as a backlog. And you can do this with all these views inside Visual Studio Online. Out of the box, what we do is we give you a number of columns that match the number of states in your work items. So for this particular process template, our user story goes through a progression of being new, active, resolved, and closed. For this demo, that's not super interesting, so I'm going to actually change it. I could come up here and add new columns if I wanted, but what I'm going to do is actually get it down to 3, and I'm going to say things we've got to do, things that are in progress, and then things that are done. And I'm going to show you, I'm just going to put a limit of 2 items on the middle column, just so I can demo another feature for you. So we can now start dragging and dropping these things through this flow. So we already went and created a team project and signed up for VSO, so we can move that over to our done column. And then now we're going to get started on building a backlog. Now, one of the things I'm going to notice, I took my hand off the mouse, so everybody watch me. You'll notice I have a touch laptop, but this is all touch-enabled as well. So if you have those nice big monitors in your team rooms where you can have touch-enabled, this is really fun and really cool. A lot of our teams sort of leave a Kanban view like this or a task board view up on their boards and use it daily, so it's a great feature. Now, if you're familiar with Kanban, you know that you might want work item limits on each of these columns. So you'll notice that as I drag more things in, notice that this count starts to turn red. Did you see that? That's because it's telling me that I've got too many things in this particular column. It's not going to stop you, but at least it's going to give you a little visual indicator. So let's put those back and go ahead and get started on some of the other pieces of the demo. OK, so those are the backlog tools. Other things that you can do here, you can also just go and create queries like I showed you before. So I'm just going to go create a new query. And you could query across really anything. And I'm going to build a query here of all work item types, or sorry, all work items. It's really just what we've got in our backlog so far. But I'm going to save this under shared queries. And I'm just going to save it as new query 1. And now I'm going to just go add another new work item type. I'm going to add a bug in this case. So say this is a bug. You'll see here how we've got a bunch of great fields and ways that you can track bugs. So I'm not going to show you all that, but we could add some tags here as well. And now when we go back to our query and we run it, you'll see that the bug shows up as a red item. Each work item type gets its own color inside TFS. And what I actually want to show you today is I'm going to show you how you can just take this and build a quick chart out of it. So maybe we wanted to track all of our work by work item type, for example, things that were on our backlog. We could come up here and say, you know, user stories are good things. We'll turn them green. Bugs are red things. We'll create a nice little chart. And then what we can do with this chart is actually pin it to our home page. And if I go back, you'll notice here that I can now start to build sort of a dashboard, if you will, of metrics that make sense to me. So you can do this across code metrics, you can do this across build metrics, and with work item queries, you can get really customized here. OK, so I've shown you how to do that kind of stuff inside Visual Studio Online. Let's keep going. And now we're going to go actually get started by connecting this project to Visual Studio and building an actual website. So I'm going to click on this little handy link right here that says Open in Visual Studio. I'm going to show you how this works. Get a little prompt. And we're going to open up Visual Studio 2013. I'm running Visual Studio 2013 Ultimate Update 2, so the update that was just released today. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to configure my workspace. So because I'm using Team Foundation version control, we need to create a workspace, which is where I'm going to keep the files locally on my machine. You'll notice that it's just putting it in this folder here. We'll call it AB Build Demo. And I'm going to say map and get. Now we're just creating a connection between the two. The workspace has been mapped successfully. OK, great. Now what I want to do is I'm going to just close that down and go ahead and create a new website for us. So we'll start with a new project here. Let's go up to the web, and we're going to create an ASP.NET web app. And we'll call it Aaron Build Demo. And one of the nice things here inside this particular dialog is that I actually get the ability to add application insights directly into the project when I'm creating it. I'll show you more about this later, But if you download the V6 for App Insights, which is up on the gallery, you can do this right out of the box as well. And it just adds a little bit of JavaScript into your website to do some of the telemetry tracking. So let's go ahead and get started with this particular website and create it. We're just going to create a basic MVC app here. I'm going to turn off authentication because I don't need it. And one of the nice things in Update 2 here is that you'll notice I can actually create a website directly on Windows Azure at the time I'm creating it locally on my machine. So that's another kind of nice new feature in Visual Studio 2013 Update 2. So let's go ahead and create this particular website and get that started. Oh, good. Aaron Build Demo is available. You'll see we're authenticating with Azure here. I've got to pick my subscription. That all looks good. And away we go. OK. Now, while that's creating, since that'll take about 30 seconds here or so, I'm going to run over to my project here, and I'm going to show you another feature that we're going to come back to. So I'm going to show you our team room feature. How many of you guys work in physical team rooms today? Meaning you all sit together, dev, QA, and whatnot. Raise the hands. OK, a few. It looks like maybe 20% of the audience. It's a great way, I think the industry's going this way. We actually do it within Microsoft. We're starting this. So I sit in a team room with my peers or with other folks. We're kind of doing away with offices, and it seems like this is sort of the way we're going in the future. But I know that always isn't the case. You can't always sit that way. Sometimes you get people working remote. Sometimes you just don't have a physical space that actually is set up for that. And even if you're sitting in a team room, we've built a feature here called the Team Room feature inside Visual Studio Online, which allows you to collaborate with other folks. So I could come up and add different people into this. I don't think I've got anybody in the room here on my team. I've got Matt in the back, but I don't think he's added to my project, so I won't do that. But I could add like Brian Keller and Brian Harry into my project, and they'd get invites, and maybe they'll come up here and start chatting with me, and I could say, hey, Brian, you know, the service is slower than it should be, even though it's not. Take a look. We can chat here. And what we can also do is have all of our events from our project start to show up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign up for a few things. I'm going to say that all code changes for this project I want to get alerted about in my team room. Oops, didn't want to do that. And all work item updates by anyone in the team project, I want to get alerted in here as well. What this really starts to become is almost like a transcript of what's going on inside your code base, inside your project, and hopefully inside your team as well if you're conversing inside the team room. So we've signed up for that, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes and take a look at how we can take advantage of this. So let me jump back over into our project. Whoops, we forgot to add this thing to source control. So there we go. And let's go ahead and as soon as this finishes installing this package, we're going to go ahead and check it in and get started here. So we're adding App Insights now, you can see. All right, great. So I'm going to go back over here to Team Explorer, and I'm going to take a look at my pending changes, and you can see that I've got my new website here. And let's go ahead and check in all these changes. Checking in our build demo. OK, so we're now committing that up into Visual Studio Online and checking it in. And that'll just take a second as well. Now, while that's going, what I also want to show you is something pretty cool. And that's that you'll notice right down here at the bottom, overall status, Windows Azure website, Aaron Build Demo is ready. And it's actually been provisioned. So let's go back to our web browser. And you'll notice here I'm up and running on Windows Azure. I'm signed in as Aaron Bjork at hotmail.com. And you see that I got a website here now called Aaron Build Demo. It loaded asynchronously, so it's not a very good demo, but I can promise you that wasn't there before. It just showed up. So we've got this brand new website created, and we can go browse it. And it's been provisioned for us. That all happened through the create process when we created the website through Visual Studio. OK, so this website isn't very interested. So let's go make it interesting. And what we're going to do there is by going back into Azure and we're actually going to configure this particular website so that it can talk directly to Visual Studio Online, and we're going to deploy it. I could deploy it through Visual Studio, but I want to show you how we can deploy it this way. So back here in Azure, and on my Aaron Build Demo website, I'm going to come down here and click this particular button here that says Set up Deployment from Source Control. And when I click that, you'll notice I'm prompted for where I'm keeping my source code, and one of those options is Visual Studio Online. So I'll come in here and authenticate by typing in my account name, aaronbjork.visualstudio.com. And I'll go ahead and authorize that. Now, this is where we're sort of building a two-way trust here between the two systems. So you'll notice that this is actually a page not served up by Azure, but served up by VSO, Visual Studio Online. And it's saying, hey, somebody's trying to connect to your website. You better make sure that you want them to do that. So we've got to sort of authenticate on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And now I get to choose a repository to deploy. And these are all my different projects. Remember I said you had unlimited repositories or unlimited projects. You can see all the ones I've got. And you'll notice down here we've got AB Build Demo. So let's go ahead and choose that. Now what we're doing is we're just creating a link essentially between that code base on Visual Studio Online and the actual website that we've got here inside Azure. OK, so that link has been created. So now let's go back into Visual Studio Online. And let's go ahead and change this particular project so it's a bit more interesting maybe than it is today. And I'm actually not going to make an interesting change, so that's kind of a lie. But let's just call it Aaron's Build Demo. And learning about Visual Studio Online. OK, so like I said, it's not super interesting. Made those changes. You'll notice that Visual Studio understands that that particular file is changed. And when I come back into pending changes, we've got one pending change, the index CS HTML file that we just changed. Now, I'm going to show you another nice feature inside Visual Studio Online, which is I'm going to go to my Work tab here. And My Work is just a place inside Visual Studio that tracks sort of your pending changes as So down here at the bottom, you'll see it says Available Work Items. And we're waiting for this particular page to load here. And as soon as it does, it's going to show me a list of all the work items that are assigned to me. And I'm going to be able to create a relationship between this particular check-in and one of those work items. So I'm patiently waiting now. Still patiently waiting. There we go. It showed up. So you'll notice here, I've got the items that are assigned to me, build a backlog, continuous integration and continuous deployment, new website on Azure. So let's take this particular one, new website on Azure. We're going to drag it up here, as well as this CI and CD one. And we're going to associate that, those particular work items with these changes. So we'll go back to View Changes. And let's commit our homepage changes. And go ahead and check this in. OK, so that particular item has been checked in. And let's take a look at a couple of things that have happened because of that. Now, the first thing I want to show you is I'm going to go back into Team Explorer. And I'm going to go over to the Builds area. And one of the things that you'll notice is I have this build definition. It actually wasn't there before, but it's called Aaron Build Demo CD. CD stands for Continuous Deployment. And when we created the link between Azure and Visual Studio Online, we actually automatically got given this particular build definition. And this build definition, if I look at the properties for it, you'll notice that it's set up so that anytime I do a check-in, it's going to automatically queue a build to run on VSO. So our trigger is continuous integration, and we want to queue a new build. Now, what we've also got is you'll notice over here, we've got a build that's actually been queued up. And I can view it inside Visual Studio here, or I can come back over into Visual Studio Online, and I'll see it here as well. So here's that build definition. And if I go to queued, you'll see that we've got this particular build queued up. So it's automatically done that for me. Now, while we're waiting for that build to actually run, it'll take a few minutes for the build controller to pick it up and run it for us. Let me jump back and show you a couple of other things that have happened as a result of our check-in. I'm going to start by going back to the home page. Actually, I'm going to go to the code section first. And inside Visual Studio Online, we actually keep a record of all your changes and everything that you've done with your code base. So you can see here, at 1:30, 6 minutes ago, we did our first check-in for our build demo. And I could click on it and view what's happened there. All these files are green because they were all added, and you can see we had 128 files added here. I could click in and view actually any of these files, but it's not super interesting in a demo like this. But let's go back, and let's take a look at the one that I just committed when we made our homepage changes. Now what you notice here is you get a nice view down here of the diff, so we get to see how the code looked before and how it looks now. We can see, we could come up and actually annotate this and say, I really liked the old title, and do things like that and save it so that other people can comment in here. And what's really nice is you'll notice that we've actually got this particular change set associated with both of these work items. Remember, we have a backlog of things that we're doing here. New website on Azure, and then continuous integration and continuous deployment. And we've got links created directly to those work items. And that's what I did when I went to the My Work section. So let's go back to work. And let's go back to our backlog. And if we view this particular board view, here's our, those items are done. So they sort of fell off my backlog. So we've automatically closed them because they were resolved with that particular check-in. The reason I wanted to show you this is because one of the great things about application lifecycle management is being able to create this traceability aspect between all your work item or all your artifacts within your team projects. And that's what's great about VSO here, is that not only are you sort of understanding how builds are running and understanding how your backlog's doing and understanding how your code's doing, but you can see how all that's interconnected and you can actually see the relationships. So if we go back to our code, and I will jump into one of these right here, and we could take a look at user story 686, and we could actually go in here and see that link that's been created with the change set. Okay, now another nice thing that's been going on here is you'll notice this tab up here. You see how it has the little 3 by it? That's actually been changing as we've been clicking around. And let me show you what's been changing. This is that team room that we set up a few minutes ago, and where we invited Brian and a couple others to join in. Now, what you'll see here is that we're actually getting a transcript of, again, all those changes. So you can almost think of this as like a feed of sorts of everything that's going on within the team project. We can see that our user story 686 was automatically resolved. 687 was resolved as well. And we can see the different changes that showed up here as well. And you can subscribe to all these different events. So you can subscribe to builds completing, code changes, even things like code reviews as well. And we find this to be particularly useful in projects where you want to go back. Maybe you miss a day or you miss an afternoon. You can jump up here into the team room and really sort of catch up and see what's been happening inside your project. So we find that pretty useful. Let me jump back in here again, and let's go check on our build. And you'll see here that we have our build completed here, Aaron build demo CD. It completed 2 minutes ago. Just going to double click into it. We get, a full log here of everything that happened. Again, this was sort of a very basic build, so there wasn't anything super interesting. But if I had it set up to run code coverage or run particular tests, we'd get all that information here as well. But what's awesome is you'll see that it also says here that our website was deployed, and it gives us that URL. Again, it understands the link. So I'm going to go back over to Windows Azure, and you'll see here that on our build demo site, we actually have an active deployment that happened. and gives us the timestamp here just a couple of minutes ago. And if we go back to that website that we created and we F5 it, you'll see that now we've got our fully deployed website running up on Azure. So again, I didn't do anything inside Visual Studio. All I did was check in my changes. But because we had that deep link created between the project on Visual Studio Online and this particular website on Azure, now every time I check in changes, they're going to automatically flow to this website running on Azure. That's awesome, and I hope you guys kind of understand the power of that. And you can be taking advantage of this in just a few minutes as well, taking the very simple steps that I'm showing you here today. So let me keep going now and show you a bunch of other stuff around running load tests and around running application insights. Has anybody been using application insights yet? Has anybody raise a hands? Very few people. Nobody? Oh, one. Okay, we got them. All right, good. So application insights, again, I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but it's a great way to start getting telemetry on your application. And we want you folks using it, and we want your feedback on this. We need your feedback. We want you to tell us how you need this to work so that it can help you run your business better. And again, I'm going to point you to some sessions. There's one immediately following this where you're going to get a deep dive into how you can get started with this. But let me give you sort of a teaser right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is run back into Visual Studio. And you'll see here inside my particular app, let me go down to Shared, and let's go to Shared Layout, this particular file. Now, you can take a look right here at this particular bit of JavaScript, and you'll notice that this was added to us, added for us automatically when we created this project. So it's just a little bit of JavaScript that's going to essentially talk asynchronously back to Visual Studio Online as we're running the app. So we got that hooked up for us. What we also got hooked up is we have some dashboards and things down here that are available to us. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Aaron Build Demo dashboard. And this is a new area inside Visual Studio Online where we start to get, we can start to see how our app is performing. Now, you'll notice that all these dashboards are kind of blank right now. There's nothing really interesting here. It takes a couple minutes for the analytics to kick in, and we actually haven't done anything. I think we hit our website once since we've deployed it, okay? But once you start to kind of understand the power here, you can start to instrument this area to give you a lot of really interesting information. And so let me take you back over to my personal project, and I'll just show you how I've started to take advantage of some of this as well. I'm going to go into my Top Gun Prod recent dashboard, and I'm now in Application Insights. And I can start to drill in and understand who's viewing this particular site. I can get information on how much activity I've got, who's coming back, how many active sessions I've got, and all that. So again, this is awesome because what it starts to do is it starts to deploy sort of the real-world analytics of your app running, and you can start to tie this directly into your environment and your code base. So no longer do you have to see these in sort of separate places. It's all going to be in a single spot. And I think you'll see the marrying of all these things start to really come together over the next few months. One of the exciting things about Application Insights is that when we announced it back in November, you needed an invite to get up and get started with it. We've actually removed that limitation this last week. So anybody can get up and try it out, and I'd encourage you to do that. When you sign up for your account and you get your landing page like this, there's a nice big blue tile up here that says Try Application Insights. Just click that, and there's a bunch of starter videos on how you can get started and take advantage of it. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you, now that we've done all that, is let's go set up load testing and understand how Visual Studio Online and Azure can help us understand if our site is actually going to stand up to the pressure. So I'm going to go back into the Solution Explorer here, collapse a few things so it's not as confusing. And we're going to add a new project in. And the project that we're going to add this time is a web performance and load test project. And we'll call this Aaron Build Demo Load. Let's put it in the same workspace. We'll put it in here. And we'll go ahead and get this added in. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up, we got this new file here called local test settings. I'm just going to double click that for you. And this is where a bunch of the test settings are run, or are stored for, actually. And what you can see here is that one of the options I have is I can run tests on my local computer or on a local test controller, so I can set this up to all be run locally. But one of the things that you might want to do is if you're running load tests, you'll see this only applicable for load tests, is you can actually use VSO or Visual Studio Online to run your load tests for you. So I'm going to take that and actually do it. And we'll close out of that. And let's go in and record a test on our website. So you'll notice I got a sample test here for me. I'm going to click the record button. And let's go grab our URL for our app. Okay, so here's our site. You'll notice that as I click around, it's going to start recording all the different steps. And that should be good. Go ahead and stop that. And as we stop it, what we'll see happens is back in Visual Studio, we're going to get an exception. So it's perfect. Well, we'll just hope it all still works. What it's doing now, you'll see it says things like detecting dynamic parameters. What it's doing essentially is sort of parsing all of our different steps and understanding where we could sort of pull different things out so we could configure it. So what I'm going to just do is take one of these right here. I'm going to say, when we clicked on the About page, and let me open this guy up. Oop, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, sorry. We needed to add in our load test first. My fault. So let me go back here to this particular project and say add in our load test now that we've got our web test. And we can next through this dialog. This is kind of cool. This is where we get to set up the pattern for how we want activity to start to show up. So I'm going to say start our user count at 5. Every 5 seconds, I want you to add 10 more users, and we'll max out at 200 users. And then we're going to come up here and add in that particular test that we just did. So essentially, it's going to take that script that I just created and recorded, and it's going to run that a whole bunch of times. And we could change other settings as well, but I'm going to finish that guy out. And now that we've got our load test created, we'll come up here and we'll run it. Now, what's happening at this point is essentially Visual Studio Online in the background is sort of queuing up your test, and it's preparing it to run, and it's going to start pushing load to your website. So it's going to start hitting that actual site. You can configure the URLs and all those kind of things, and giving you an indication of whether or not your particular site is going to stand up under pressure. Now, this is a very, very simple example, but you're going to see how it starts to give you really, really important information. Because as you know, performance is everything. And if you can't, well, we learned this with the government website, right, for healthcare. If you can't have 60 people using it at the same time, it's not going to work. So maybe we should get them invested in this tool. So I'm going to let this run for a minute. And while we do that, you're going to see we're going to start to get some data come in here on our dashboard. But while we're doing that, let me just jump back over into our team room. Actually, let's not jump to the team room. Let's go back here into work. And let's take a look at our Kanban board. And let's make sure that we've done all these things. Oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Here we go. So we've built our backlog. We've run load tests. We did App Insights, and we did this, whatever that one was that we just created. And you'll notice, actually, as you'll watch as that's happening, we're getting our new events showing up in our team room. And as we go back into Visual Studio, we can actually start to see the load test happening, and you'll see the climb start happening here as well. OK, so let me switch back to my PowerPoint slides. and we took a look at all those different things that we could do. And we're going to have, let's see, I show about 6 minutes left on my clock. So first, I want to point you to these sessions. These are the sessions beyond this session that kind of go deep on all this stuff. So if you have a lot of questions, I'd encourage you to do that. And then I think we'll take maybe 5 minutes of questions at the mics. So I'd ask you to raise your hand, but I'd just say head to a mic if you have any sort of questions that you want to ask about Visual Studio Online, and I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, you can raise your hand too. So.
You opened the project with the desktop version of Visual Studio.
Yes.
Can you do the same thing with Visual Studio Online, totally online?
You can. Let me show you this. So the question is, I showed how you could open the project with the desktop, and how can you actually do that in Visual Studio Online? What I'll show you is that back on Azure, and I'm going to do this for a different website just because I've already got it set up. Oh, sorry. Thank you. And then I'll get your question next. So this is my, my Top Gun site. You can see my load here. I could actually click Edit inside Visual Studio Online. And what I'm actually opening here is sort of a direct funnel right to that site running on Azure where I can actually browse my code, and I could actually make changes here as well. So I could come up to a page here, and I could come in here and say, you know, title equals, and you get a IntelliSense and all that kind of stuff. This is a preview of what we call Visual Studio Monaco, and it's actually a really lightweight editing experience running inside your browser. And you can do this with any of those websites that you've created as well. So the way to make that happen is inside Azure, you come up here and you click Edit in Visual Studio Online. You can only do it for websites on Azure today, but you're going to see a lot more of that show up in the future as well. So yeah, great question. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know what's an update to, but if you were not building and publishing to an Azure website, but actually to a website running in a cloud service, there's issues around using this paradigm of pushing continuously.
Okay.
What is the roadmap for supporting that, where you basically have to do something with PowerShell with a CI on-prem or something else?
Yep. So yeah, question about continuous integration, continuous deployment on other platforms, not just on Azure. I guess I'm just going to defer that question to Chris Patterson. I'm going to say go to his session tomorrow. He is the guy on that, and he'll give you the full roadmap for everything. But in short, we're going to do more there. So you're not just going to be limited to Azure out of the box. So it's a good question. Yeah.
Hi. So a high-level question coming as the owner of a small development shop rather than developer. I believe to get all our collaboration features in place, we had to deploy SharePoint, SQL Server, and such. Does this online tool replace all that infrastructure? Is the source code physically stored online?
Yeah.
And is you still have to license Visual Studio separately for the actual compile and, and test and run?
Yeah, the question really is like, how does this relate to Team Foundation Server on premises, right? And
yes.
I would say that there's some differences today. Does it replace it? I think in some ways it does. So if you're a shop that doesn't want to have servers on premise and you're comfortable storing your code in the cloud, come to Visual Studio Online. I think we've got your answer for you. We don't have all the reporting features. We don't have Active Directory integration. There's some missing stuff there, but I think you'll find that we're investing in it and we're bringing it there. Now, you still have to buy Visual Studio itself, the development tool, but you can buy user plans that basically couple Visual Studio and Visual Studio Online together. So if you're a small shop where you don't want to have infrastructure and you're comfortable with your code in the cloud, I think it's a great option for you. We've actually got a lot of big enterprises making the switch to VSO as well because they really see the power of how you can spin things up quickly, collaborate, and they don't want to have the overhead of that infrastructure on premise.
And if for some reason the connection to the cloud is down, is there some kind of local mirroring that you can do?
Well, you can always suck it down as much as you want, but I guess my answer to that question was hopefully the cloud won't be down. You're going to see that we're standing behind this service. This isn't a toy, and we're going to be making some guarantees very soon around financially backed SLAs and making sure that it's up all the time and can meet your needs. So, thanks for the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you support multiple websites in a single solution for the continuous deployment?
Great question. I don't know the answer. Ask Chris Patterson. He will know the answer. So, good question. Yeah, go ahead.
In our Scrum and Kanban process, we've kind of found a lot of value in doing individual version buckets for
Okay.
QA. Is there anything like that that's integrated into this so that you could have, sliced off versions that someone could hit directly?
I'm not sure I completely understand the different versions, but maybe come talk to me afterwards and we'll talk about it. I'm going to keep taking questions, but before I forget, Yossi is in the back. Yossi's going to wave his hand. Yossi's one of our UX researchers and is going to be here to also take a bunch of feedback. So if you have feedback on what you've seen, feel free to stop by Yossi and share it with him. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Of what you showed us, what was specific to VS Ultimate and what was a paid feature versus a free feature for VSO?
Yeah, so the question is sort of what was a part of Ultimate and what was free. I think everything that I showed you in Visual Studio Online is a part of the free basic user plan. So when you sign up, you're going to get some cloud load testing minutes and some build minutes with your account. I didn't show you portfolio management, which is a paid feature. Actually, Team Room is a paid feature. So that's something you'd have to pay for. But all the basics are included.
The load testing, is that either, we have premium at work.
Yeah.
Does that include the load testing?
Good question. I don't know the answer to it, but maybe ask me at the booth or somebody at
Okay.
the booth and I can get the answer.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any tools available to migrate the TFS 2012 server to Team Foundation servers?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer now, but the basic answer is no. There's not migration tools. It's something we're working on.
Okay.
But you can do tip migrations of, using Excel or just checking in the code base and whatnot. There's some ways to get a fair amount of your history there, but not everything.
What about like Scrum templates and
Process templates and things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the same process templates on the cloud that we have on premises. The one thing we don't support yet on the cloud is customizing your process template.
Okay.
So if you've made a lot of customizations, we don't support that yet on Visual Studio Online, but that's something that'll be coming soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, go ahead.
What is the adoption of Visual Studio Online in the enterprise, not at the consumer level? And the other question is the security around the data and the source code in the cloud.
Yeah, good question. I don't know that I have numbers I can share about adoption in the enterprise, but I can just tell you that every week I have enterprises talking to me about how they can move to Visual Studio Online. So it's happening, and we're seeing it happen. In terms of privacy and security, I don't have all the details on that, but we could sort of dig into our SLA. But you can be guaranteed that we're not going to take your source code. We have a lot of policies around who even can look at it. You have to go through background checks, even to get to the prod environments. So we take security very, very seriously, and it's not something we want any of our customers to feel like they're going to be compromised when they go to Visual Studio Online. We can talk more in the booth as well, and we could go through some more details there. So, yeah.
Yeah, does VSO provide tools to look at multiple projects simultaneously, like kind of summaries if we have 5 or 6 different projects going simultaneously?
Yeah, great question. We don't have a lot of portfolio tools, if you will, today. We do support integration with Project Server. So if you're a Project Server user, you can do some of that. But we don't have it sort of natively baked into the product yet. So,
Thanks.
yeah, we got 2 more, so quickly.
I know currently in the test side, you can run the manual test cases from online. Are there any plans to allow people to kick off the automated tests using controllers or from local machines through the online version?
Don't know the answer, but shoot me an email about it and I'll get it for you.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
I have a question about integration with, say, Link or SharePoint or Team Room.
Yeah.
Maybe a Link can replace the Team Room.
Yeah, I don't think Link will ever replace the Team Room, but I would say we're looking at all those integration scenarios. So Visual Studio Online doesn't integrate with Yammer or SharePoint or any of those. There are definitely things that are on our roadmap, though, and I think you'll see us start to talk about that more. Okay. But it's just not there today. So, all right, we're a few minutes over, but thanks.